spring of 1940, Hitler launched his blitzkrieg. It was lightning fast, incredibly effective. By June 25th, in mere weeks, Norway, Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France all surrendered to the Nazi invasion. Nazi Germany became an unstoppable force in Europe. Britain stood completely alone against Hitler's war machine. His Luftwaffe, the world's most advanced air force, was set to bomb Britain, preparing for an invasion. Operation Sea Lion. During this critical time, Winston Churchill rose to power. On May 10, 1940, the same day Germany invaded France, Churchill replaced Chamberlain as Prime Minister. Mr. Chamberlain, thank you for your efforts. We welcome the new Prime Minister, Mr. Churchill. Churchill had been warning about Hitler for years. He long argued Hitler's ambitions were far more dangerous than many believed, criticizing Chamberlain's appeasement as naive and reckless. Though seen by many as unpredictable and controversial, Churchill's foresight and firm stand against Nazi tyranny made him the right leader at the right moment. In his first speech to Parliament as Prime Minister, he famously declared, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." Churchill's leadership, determination, and powerful oratory became a rallying cry for the entire nation. In 1940, as Nazi flags flew over Paris and much of Western Europe fell to Hitler, Winston Churchill's leadership became the last major force resisting Nazi domination across the continent. Immediately after taking office, Churchill moved to create a coalition government that included members from all major parties: conservatives, labor, and liberals. We conceived on the broadest possible basis that it should include all parties. This was a smart move to unify the country politically during an era of unprecedented danger. He also took on the role of Minister of Defense, giving him direct control over military strategy and coordination. One of his first major challenges was addressing the disastrous situation unfolding in France. The British Expeditionary Force, along with French and Belgian troops, were being pushed back toward the coast by the advancing German army. Churchill ordered the start of Operation Dynamo, a bold and improvised rescue from the beaches of Dunkirk. Between May 26 and June 4, 1940, over 330,000 Allied soldiers were saved in what Churchill described as a miracle of deliverance. While Britain's military equipment losses were substantial in the Dunkirk rescue, the evacuation preserved the core of Britain's army for future defense efforts. After France surrendered to Germany, Churchill faced increasing pressure from some within his government to explore peace talks with Hitler. But Churchill refused. He believed Hitler couldn't be trusted and that any peace would simply mean temporary servitude. In one of his most famous wartime speeches, "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." Churchill began preparing the nation for a potential German invasion. This involved fortifying the coastline, arming the Home Guard, England's primary civilian militia, and organizing food and fuel rationing to prepare for a prolonged conflict. He made numerous visits to neighborhoods hit by bombings, speaking directly with ordinary citizens and boosting public morale. Then came the Battle of Britain in the summer and fall of 1940. Churchill collaborated closely with military leaders to coordinate Britain's air defense. The Royal Air Force, despite being outnumbered, repelled the Luftwaffe, preventing Germany from gaining air supremacy. Churchill immortalized their bravery with these words of immense gratitude. "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." With France occupied, Churchill initiated smaller raids against German positions in Europe and encouraged resistance groups through the Special Operations Executive and British Commandos. In the subsequent months, Churchill concentrated on several key objectives: preparing for future German aggression, building international alliances, and opening new war fronts. In March 1941, Churchill strongly supported the Lend-Lease Act, through which the United States supplied Britain with military equipment, ships, and food without demanding immediate payment. The planes, the tanks, the guns. This act ensured Britain could continue its war effort despite financial strain. Churchill referred to it as the most unsung contribution in the history of any nation. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, a highly aggressive and surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. Within days, Churchill announced Britain's full support for the Soviets, famously stating, "If Hitler invaded hell, I would at least make a favorable reference to the devil in the House of Commons." Although Churchill had long opposed communism, he understood that any enemy of Hitler was a necessary ally. This marked the start of the Grand Alliance, a fragile partnership among Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Churchill moved swiftly to strengthen this alliance. He coordinated with President Franklin D. Roosevelt to expand Lend-Lease aid to the Soviet Union, providing weapons, vehicles, and food to help support the Red Army. Churchill also dispatched British military missions to Moscow and began regular communication with Joseph Stalin. While cautious of Stalin's intentions, Churchill prioritized defeating Nazi Germany and believed cooperation was essential. When the United States officially entered the war after Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the Grand Alliance was fully solidified. Churchill also directed his efforts toward North Africa, where British forces clashed with the Axis powers. These early campaigns, including the defense of Egypt and the Suez Canal, were crucial in maintaining British influence and weakening Hitler's southern flank. After achieving victory in North Africa in 1943, Churchill promoted a soft underbelly strategy, invading Europe via Italy, which he felt would weaken the Axis powers and draw German forces away from France. He was initially hesitant to launch a cross-channel invasion into France too soon, fearing heavy casualties and logistical problems. Instead, he backed campaigns in Sicily in July 1943 and mainland Italy in September 1943, which led to Italy's surrender, but also a lengthy and difficult conflict against German forces. In November 1943, at the Tehran Conference, Churchill finally agreed, under pressure from both Roosevelt and Stalin, that a major invasion of Western Europe, codenamed Operation Overlord, would occur in the spring of 1944. Despite his reservations, Churchill acknowledged the political and military necessity of this decision, especially to fulfill Stalin's request for a second front to alleviate pressure on the Eastern Front. In the months leading up to D-Day, Churchill was heavily involved in the high-level planning for Operation Overlord. He stressed deception tactics like Operation Bodyguard to mislead the Germans, supported extensive logistical operations across southern England, and continued crucial diplomacy to coordinate with the US and Soviet Union. By early 1944, Churchill's leadership had helped align the Allies on a unified strategy, a decisive invasion of Nazi-occupied France. During the first month of the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe, beginning with D-Day on June 6, 1944, Winston Churchill played a vital leadership role both publicly and behind the scenes. He visited military headquarters and even considered landing in Normandy himself shortly after the beachheads were secured, though King George VI and his advisors convinced him against it for safety reasons. Following the liberation of Paris in August 1944, Allied forces advanced towards Germany. Churchill maintained close coordination with Roosevelt and Stalin, working to keep British interests prominent in Allied strategy. Churchill supported General Montgomery's endeavors during Operation Market Garden in September 1944, a bold but unsuccessful attempt to gain swift entry into northern Germany via the Netherlands. Despite the setback, Churchill stood by his commanders and reaffirmed Britain's commitment to the Allied cause. During the Battle of the Bulge, the final major counteroffensive by the Nazis, from December 1944 to January 1945, Winston Churchill and Great Britain acted quickly to aid the United States, which bore the main burden of the surprise German attack. General Bernard Montgomery's 21st Army Group took charge of the northern sector of the front. Churchill later commended the U.S. effort, but also stressed that the British had honorably contributed to one of the last major battles of World War II in Europe. In 1945, as victory over Nazi Germany neared, Winston Churchill shifted his focus toward the complex task of shaping the post-war world and safeguarding Britain's. Churchill also focused on international matters, particularly the rising strength of the Soviet Union. During the Yalta Conference in February 1945, he collaborated closely with Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin, aiming to shape post-war territories, decide Eastern Europe's future, and establish the United Nations. Churchill greatly feared Soviet dominance in Eastern Europe, hoping to uphold democratic systems whenever feasible. Following the worldwide announcement of Hitler's demise, Germany's formal surrender occurred only a few days later, in early May 1945. Winston Churchill was hailed as a triumphant wartime commander, yet his political standing shifted dramatically and quickly. With the European war concluded, Britain's focus moved to recovery and societal improvements. A general election took place in July 1945, the first in a decade. Despite Churchill's widespread acclaim, the Conservative Party experienced a significant defeat by Clement Attlee's Labour Party, which had promised substantial societal reforms. Churchill was shocked by the election outcome but accepted the loss gracefully. He resigned as Prime Minister but maintained his involvement in political life. Though out of office, Churchill continued to impact global events, warning about Soviet expansion in his renowned 1946 Iron Curtain address. Returning as Prime Minister in 1951, his period after 1945 represented a shift from wartime leader to distinguished elder statesman. Winston Churchill's command during World War II is remembered as a pivotal and honorable era in British history. Churchill inspired the British people through his steadfast resolve, powerful addresses, and a resolute refusal to yield to Nazi oppression. His leadership steered Britain with both defiance and unwavering determination. Churchill's strategic foresight, diplomatic acumen, and alliance with Roosevelt and Stalin were instrumental in defeating Hitler. While sometimes debated, Churchill's bravery, eloquent speaking, and dedication to liberty made him a symbol of defiance against tyranny. His wartime direction not only protected Britain's autonomy but also contributed to shaping the world after the war. Churchill is still honored as the resolute leader who stood firm when Britain and democracy faced their gravest challenge. International affairs were also a major focus for Churchill, especially the growing might of the Soviet Union.